What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and this one I'm going to be breaking down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down why tomorrow is going to be another very important day, as we have some important economic data coming out, and all of this could affect the markets. But before I break anything down, all this information, before I talk about the big unemployment numbers that are coming out again, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Weeble link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Weeble, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 6 free stocks. If you deposit $500, you're guaranteed 20 free stocks plus 6 months of level 2 data. If you deposit $25,000 or more, you're guaranteed 70 free stocks plus 12 months of level 2 data. Very helpful for trading. This offer ends in just 11 days, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, let's break down what's going on with the market. As a reminder, guys, tomorrow we have some very important data coming out. An hour before the market opens, we have the non-farm payrolls, we have the unemployment rate, and then we also have the labor force participation rate and the governmental payrolls data. The payrolls data and then the unemployment rate will be the two most important pieces of data coming out an hour before the market opens, and they're the most important pieces of data for the entire day. So make sure you watch this data, see how the unemployment rate is looking, and watch how the market reacts to that. Then at 10 o'clock a.m., we have the Michigan Consumer Sentiment Report, the 5-year inflationary expectations, and the Michigan Current Conditions Report. And that's pretty much it for the data. We just have like two main time frames in which the data is going to be coming out, but the biggest pieces of data will come out an hour before market open tomorrow. Now, with that being said, I just want to remind you all that Monday is going to be a very quiet day. There's not much coming out. But Tuesday is when we have CPI coming out, and that's going to be very, very important. So we're going to be watching CPI. We'll be watching to see how this affects the markets. We have to be very careful. And I think that if you look at SPY, we've been range bound for the last couple of weeks. I think we're going to maintain this range for quite some time. And I think that CPI is going to be the catalyst that's going to either break this range, causing a big break to the upside, or even a bigger break to the downside into these lower levels. So as a reminder, when you look at SPY, right, we have a lot of puts expiring tomorrow. We have max pain at 451, and we have over a million puts expiring with about just under like 300, not 300, 600,000 calls expiring. So with all these puts expiring, could the market makers try to squeeze shorts? It's always a possibility, but never always 100% guaranteed. I just want to note that max pain's at 451, so it's well below where we currently are. So even if SPY does try to like pop a little bit more and hold up, they're going to be fine. If SPY were to pop and then drop just a bit, they're also going to be fine. So it doesn't really matter to them that much. But honestly, guys, if I was a market maker, I would want SPY to be closer to max pain because that benefits me the most. So if there is, some kind of interesting move coming, either way, I think they're going to be fine. But what does this mean for tomorrow? I have a very simple view of the markets. I was talking about a potential trade opportunity, but I mentioned to everyone to just be very careful with this. So with SPY in this range, okay, we have a tendency of getting rejected between 458 and 460. That's what's happened the last four times we were at this level. Now, could we break out with the data? It's always a possibility. And for me to turn really bullish, we have to break 460. With all the options expiring, could that happen? It's a possibility. And that's the reason why like I would set my stop loss like very close to 460 if I were to short. But I do want to note that there's a real possibility that the market could either get one more push up or kind of like reject from here. And whether the rejection comes on Friday or by Monday, I don't truly know. So we'll just have to see. But if we get one more rejection, I think that would be very healthy. And I think that it's a possibility because SPY has this gap, this big gap down below that's still unfilled. And it's actually very close to us. It's just 3 points away from us. That's very different from the big gap we have in the 440s. That's very far from us. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do get a rejection here either at 459, maybe like up to 460. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens, and then we end up seeing SPY essentially just come back down. This gap technically could extend a little higher, so we could actually push a little bit more, try to hold up a bit, and start churning intraday. And then by Monday, I wouldn't be surprised if we get one more pullback to try to fill this gap. By either Monday or tomorrow, I'm not 100% sure exactly when, but soon I think a pop and drop like move is coming. That's the most likely possibility. And then by Monday, once this gap is like filled and we bounce, we'll be in our range. And then whether or not we break out to the upside will most likely be determined by CPI. If SPY goes up to like 467 plus, or if SPY ends up, sinking back down to like the 450s or below 450, that is going to be determined by CPI, in my opinion. So, could the market break out? It's always a possibility. If you're planning on shorting, just hypothetically, right, between 458 or even like up to 460, if you have like a short plan, I'm gonna if I were to do it, I would set my stop like very close to this level right here, just above 460. That's like one level you could be looking out for, just in case you want to do that. But if it breaks 460, that's where I would just like try to close a lot of shorts, and that's when it's going to just continue to break out. I do think it's a little unlikely it's going to just continue to just absolutely crush 460 instantly and start pushing up, because for now we've been stuck in this range and there's a good chance it may maintain this range for just a couple more trading days. So once again, guys, there's a bullish case, there's a bearish case. What do I think is most likely going to happen? My view is, I think that what could happen is we might get a little pop with the data, kind of consolidate up here as they're going to build some liquidity. And then we might see a little sell off either by the end of the day on Friday or even on Monday. One more little drop, right? Just like how we saw that drop on Thursday, just like how we've gotten these drops after the pops, we might see something very similar right before CPI. I wouldn't be surprised if if they cause some kind of like pullback by early next week, by Monday, if not tomorrow, by the time we get close to close. And I think that we have this gap to fill down here. I think we're going to end up filling this gap one more time, one more drop before CPI. And then I think that CPI is going to determine if we get some kind of like massive, massive squeeze up here on Tuesday, if we just break out to 463 plus, or if we end up sinking all the way down below 450. That's what I think is most likely going to happen. But once again, guys, watch your levels just to be safe. SPY has resistance at 459. We also have resistance at 460. That's where we have a very, very key level. And then we also have supports way down here at 457.5 and 456.5, and then adds the orange trend line. I wouldn't be surprised if we just maintain this range just for a little bit longer before we get a very, very big move. With all the puts expiring on SPY, the market makers could try to hold it up just temporarily, but by the end of the day, if we do get a slight sell off, that's going to be okay for them, because remember, max pain is just very, very well below where we currently are, and they're going to be fine either way. So whether we hold up a bit tomorrow and then start selling off on Monday, I don't truly know. But by Monday, I wouldn't be surprised if we see like a pop in it, like a slight drop, and then CPI will determine if we just continue to push or not. All right, so that's my view of the market, at least for now on SPY. I find this kind of like pop and drop being very, very probable. But I will switch to bullish if we close above 460. If we manage to close above there, my view will change. I don't think that's very probable. I think we're more likely to just pop and drop. But just to be safe, make sure you're prepared for anything and make sure you watch these levels. On Tesla, I think something very similar is going to happen. One of the things I mapped out on Tesla was the fact that this thing's been consolidating quite a bit. We had a bearish case, which is where this red trend line is. If we do lose this green trend line of support, this big green line here, let me change the color to like yellow. That way it's like really easy to like color code these. The big yellow line you see, this is what's been holding Tesla up for the last couple of weeks, right? So as far as Tesla goes, in my opinion, there's a chance that Tesla might just continue to hold up. In my video from yesterday, I drew out these lines. I was talking about Tesla may pop and drop. That's very similar to what happened, except at the end of the day, Tesla tried to push up. We might see Tesla, in my opinion, try to actually push up a little bit more. We might see something like this, where Tesla tries to hold up depending on the data. And I think that it's going to get one more little pullback, and it's going to end up retesting the yellow trend line, either on at the end of the day on Friday, if not by Monday. And I think that there might be like a little pop and drop coming one more time for Monday, right before CPI, and then we might retest 238. So we might push up a little bit more towards 244, come back down to 238, and then I think that after that, CPI will determine if Tesla gets a big bounce and starts pushing back up to 250, or if we end up just collapsing and coming back down to like 233, right? So could Tesla push more tomorrow? Yes, it could try to break out a little higher. We could try to push back to 244. There might be a rejection coming either at the end of the day on Friday, if not by Monday, a little rejection to backtest this trend line. And then CPI is going to determine if we get a massive bounce to the upside or if we just start sinking like this. That's what I think is most likely on my view of Tesla. In order for us to turn bearish, I have the red line right here. We need to see Tesla basically lose the yellow trend line of support. So far, there's not a sign of that happening, so there's no reason to turn super bearish on Tesla. with all the puts, excuse me, sorry guys, with all the puts expiring, Tesla could try to push up just a little bit. I think at the end of the day, we might see either a sell off back down, or by Monday, we're going to get that move, and then we'll see what happens after CPI. For the QQQ, it's holding up decently, but make sure you watch resistance, okay? So historically, the QQQ has a tendency, and this is like over the last few weeks, of getting rejected off 391. If we break that, we could push a little higher towards like 393. In my opinion, I see either one of these being the possibility that's quite probable. QQQ might try to push up back to 391. If we break it, we could get to 393 and then start to consolidate and at least a bit. And then by Monday, we might get a little sell off right before we have the big CPI release. And then on CPI day, we might get a big bounce where we might end up sinking even lower. I also think that if we reject off 391, we could just come down starting tomorrow and we might just see like a little sell off. Part of why I say that is because the QQQ has a big gap that's very close to where we are. If I pull up the QQQ chart, I think that this gap is going to it's going to make an attempt to fill this gap down here. So there might be a little pullback coming by either starting tomorrow, if not by Monday, right before CPI. And I think that they're going to be grabbing some liquidity to cause an even bigger move. So I think that's going to happen to the QQQ, in my opinion. However, it is possible we could pop a little bit more and then drop, or kind of like drop from here. I find that very probable. But if we manage to close above like 393 or so, then I would turn really bullish. That would change my view. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're more likely going to see either one more push up into this range before we come back down, or we just come back down from here and maintain this range for just another couple more days before CPI determines what the bigger move is going to be. So could we stay, afloat for another day? Yes, we still could, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's one more pullback right before CPI that comes, and then that's going to determine what the bigger move is going to be. On Nvidia stock, it's holding up quite decently so far. You could argue that's forming kind of like a rising wedge like pattern as well at the same time. In my opinion, it still is approaching this resistance right over here. And I think that's with this uptrend that's being respected, we're going to be watching this resistance right here where this wick happens to be at this like 466 area. If we break that, 468 is a real possibility, but be very careful with this rising wedge. We might get a little pullback either by the end of the day on Friday, if not by Monday. We might get a little pullback, and then CPI will determine if Nvidia continues to squeeze to the upside or not. I think that's going to be a game changer, at least for the markets. So, could Nvidia try pushing higher? It could push a little higher towards like 468 to 470 first before it ends up getting the rejection, or it could reject from here depending on the data. But I think that the rejection could just be a temporary little pullback before a much bigger move after CPI. So watch and see if we get one more push like this going into tomorrow before we see this thing just kind of like consolidate. Monday could be the day it kind of like pulls back a little bit to fill this imbalance before we just like make a big move after CPI. So we'll see what CPI causes, but that's like one possibility. It's also possible that Nvidia it starts sinking as soon as tomorrow. I'm not 100% sure, as it depends on the data, but by next week, wouldn't be surprised if we get a little pullback just to start off early onto the week before more volatility after that. So that's what I'm leaning towards. We could hold up tomorrow. Okay, we could still hold up tomorrow and start pulling back on Monday. But that's my view of Nvidia, a little pump and drop, and we'll see how it goes. As far as Apple goes, my view is still the same on Apple. Apple is holding up decently, but there are two possibilities. Our top may have been right here at 190.95 for the time being. We might see a little pullback back down to 192.5 tomorrow on Apple, which could slow the market down. We have this imbalance to fill down here, and also an unfilled gap. We have a gap down here in that area as well. So we'll see if Apple kind of like pops and drops off the data, or if we get one more push up before we come back down. If we do get one more push up, watch 196 to 197 as resistance. We could reject off there and come back down, but I think that this is very probable for Apple. Now, this is just a move for Monday, right? The pullback, it could just happen on Monday. If that's the case, if that ends up being the case, then I would suspect that CPI day will determine if Apple gets a breakout above 197, or if if we end up just continuing to sink back down to like below 190. CPI is going to cause a big move in my opinion. We'll be watching for that very, very carefully. All right, that's it for the main five. I'm just going to be very quick with the last couple of tickers. If you look at SoFi, we're holding up quite decently, kind of consolidating. We've been stuck between our 30 minutes, 20 and 50 EMAs. Watch for this thing try to pop a little bit, maybe back test this 8.2 area. I wouldn't be surprised if we end up coming back down towards like 7.75. So I think that SoFi could kind of consolidate a bit, then eventually come back down just a little bit before we get a bigger move after CPI. The 4 hour time frame is looking a little bit weaker. We could back test this like 7.7 area very close to where the 200 EMA is before it bounces by Monday. That's one possibility. The IWM is holding up decently. We might see one more pop on this. It could pop one more time back up towards 186.5 and then reject, make its way back down to 182 and then kind of like bounce from there. Or it could just kind of like pull back from here just a little bit, back test 182 to 183, depending on where the 20 EMA is, and then try to bounce. So we'll be watching that very carefully, but just be a little careful with the IWM for the time being. As far as Microsoft goes, Microsoft is looking kind of flat right now. It's currently at 371. Look for a little pop towards 372.4, then eventually a little pullback. Might see this thing come back down towards 368, if not 366, and then bounce. So watch for that. It's been kind of consolidating, at least for the time being. On AMD, look for a very, very nice move. We made a very, very nice move to the upside today. Watch for this 130 resistance. AMD is still, once again, very, very overbought. So just be a little careful. We could see this thing try to push up towards 130, but watch that resistance right there because when you look at the weekly time frame at that 130 area, historically at between 130 and 132 we get these rejections, so it could push a little bit higher towards 130 to 132 and then come back down to 121 before this thing continues higher. Look for a little pop and drop on it. On the VIX, I just want to mention that the VIX, in my opinion, it doesn't look like the VIX is going to break out just yet. We could see an attempt to go a little higher as we're just barely getting rejected off the 4 hour 20 EMA. The VIX is still kind of green, so we'll see if this thing can try to get above 13.11. But there could be an attempt to go a little higher starting on Monday before we get a big move after CPI. For the SQQQ, this is flat, hasn't really done too much. We will see what this causes. We're still kind of stuck in this range. Could get a back test of 16.2 or the 4 hour 20 EMA. It's always a possibility. On the dollar index, we're coming down, looking kind of bearish, but we have a long wick that's forming as we're starting to see a big shift right here. We could push a little higher back up to about 104 if we do bounce off the 50 EMA. So watch that very carefully. See if we get above the 50 EMA for one more push up. Maybe by Monday, we see this thing try to form, whether it's the bottom is in or not. And then a rejection can basically form after that. So what I'm thinking is this is still looking a little bearish, which is pretty good for the markets. It might actually bounce a little bit, which could cool the market off just temporarily, right, for either Friday close or by Monday. And then we'll see how it goes after that. For Coinbase, this is still very flat right now. I think it's going to be testing 129, so I could still see a little downside before it tries to bounce. For Google, very, very nice move to the upside. This managed to gap up after some bullish news just came out. But don't forget, we have this big gap below. I wouldn't expect it to fill immediately. I would say that we have a nice inverse head and shoulders like structure that developed as well. Let me just show you the 4 hour time frame. With this inverse head and shoulders, I wouldn't be surprised if Google kind of like retraces a bit towards 136 and then tries to bounce after that back up to 141. So there could be a little retracement to cool off the RSI, and then we could see this thing bounce after that. For Amazon, we're going to be looking for this range to just maintain its form. Could backtest 145.76 and bounce after that. A little dropped and bounce. Meta managed to bounce today, which is very, very nice to see. And with that being said, we could be forming a nice cup and handle on Meta. Could come down to 322, then bounce and start pushing to the upside for 340 over the next couple of weeks. But Meta looks like it's in a bottoming formation, looks a little bullish overall now. I think that Meta has a lot of life looking at this chart. A little pullback then a bounce is very probable on Meta, and that's what I'm seeing for now on the charts. So, am I a bull? Am I a bear? The answer is neither. I think that the market's going to likely maintain its range, and I think that this may last for a few more days. In order for SPY to maintain its range, that basically means that if we do pop a little bit more, there could be a little pullback coming again before it gets one more bounce, and then we'll see what happens after CPI comes out. But that's my view for now. For now, guys, thank you all so much for listening. Have an absolutely spectacular rest of the day. Remain calm, cool, and collected. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you all so much for listening, and peace out.